Hi everyone, it's Katrina. Discoveries are stacking up. An entire lost civilization that could rival the Maya has been found in the Amazon. Giant footprints have people asking if Bigfoot is real, and there has been some chaos at the Emperor's Tomb with the Terracotta Army in China. Here are some of the strangest, most incredible discoveries you might have missed. Ancient Amazonian megacities. If you thought your keys were hard to find, try misplacing an entire civilization for 2,500 years. That's exactly what happened deep in the Ecuadorian Amazon, where scientists just revealed the archaeological equivalent of a plot twist. They found a whole lost valley of cities hidden under the rainforest canopy like it was playing hide and seek with history. Whoever these people were, they didn't leave behind just one city in ruins. They left dozens of cities in ruins. Archaeologists found an urban network complete with ceremonial plazas, multi-lane roads, drainage ditches, terraced farms, and housing platforms. Basically, suburban Amazonia circa 500 BC. They had neighborhoods, they had city planning, they probably even had homeowners association meetings. Like, hey buddy, you can't have your banana trees that tall on this block. The mastermind behind this massive revelation is Stephen Rothstein, director of France's National Center for Scientific Research. He first discovered the site over 20 years ago, but it wasn't until recent advances in LIDAR technology that he was able to chainsaw through the jungle canopy and see the truth below. Stefan isn't the only one who's been using LIDAR recently. It's the biggest thing to hit archaeology since the shovel. LIDAR, as you may already know, stands for light detection and ranging. The tool blasts laser beams from aircraft to measure the ground surface beneath dense forests. It's practically giving satellites X-ray vision. The scans of this particular area in the Amazon showed over 6,000 raised earthen platforms spread across at least 15 cities connected by highways up to 30 feet wide. Can we just pause for a moment to talk about those highways? A lot of people assume the Maya walked everywhere. They didn't have the wheel, and they didn't have horses because there were no horses in North America. So why did they need such spacious roads? Did they have some kind of transportation vehicle that historians don't know about? As for population, archaeologist Antoine Dorison estimated the urban network supported 10,000 to 30,000 people at its peak. And while that's a drop in the bucket compared to any major city today, that was a lot of people back then. The site of this forgotten civilization's home is Ecuador's Upano Valley. Researchers are saying it was likely inhabited by the Quilamope culture and then later by the Upano peoples. Unlike the Inca, these folks didn't build in stone. Why? Because the Amazon has about as much rock as a loaf of bread. The Upano used mud to build their cities instead of stone, which is an issue because mud doesn't exactly stick around. It's why the ruins of this culture are only visible through laser scans. The mud has all melted. I hope you're grasping how much has just been found. This is without a doubt a huge, history-altering discovery. Archaeologist Jose Iriarte compared the find to another Maya civilization. That's how big this discovery is, so start telling your friends. The Upano thrived during the same era as the Roman Empire. While Caesar was busy getting stabbed in the Senate, Amazonian engineers were designing road systems and hosting spiritual raves surrounded by maize fields. Which civilization would you have rather been a part of? The Upano or the Romans? Man finds giant footprint of Bigfoot. What's bigger than a bear and eats your trash? If you live in East Kelowna and woke up in the middle of the night last January thinking to yourself, wow, that was one rowdy raccoon, think again. It wasn't a raccoon going through your garbage. Apparently, it was Bigfoot. Roy Watson, a local resident on June Springs Road, said that whatever trashed his garbage bin and snapped his gate wasn't a bear, wasn't a prankster, and definitely wasn't a weather event. It was Bigfoot, or as the locals politely call him, Sasquatch. He is Canada's own elusive forest cryptid who apparently moonlights as a garbage eater. If you don't believe me, just ask Roy about the footprint. Our hero, Roy, wasn't always a card-carrying member of the Bigfoot Believers Club. In fact, he was as skeptical as your most hardcore deep state relative. Right up until the day he woke up, surveyed the wreckage of his backyard, and spotted the print, as in Bigfoot's own footprint, preserved in the muddy soil. Be careful out there, East Kelowna, Roy warned on social media. He also uploaded a photo of the 6-inch wide footprint he found. a print not even Shaq could fill with his monster-sized shoes. This footprint was so large, it must have been at least a size 22. And you know what they say about cryptids with size 22 shoes? They have a nightmare of a time finding socks that fit. To be fair to the skeptics, Roy could have heard anything rooting through his garbage at night. It happens in rural Canada all the time that critters get into the trash, but that print is just too good to ignore. It's clearly not a bear print, or a moose, or Roy's own foot. Trying to get some validation, Roy reached out to the Sasquatch experts. Enter Brian Wells, part-time researcher, full-time mystery fan. While he couldn't confirm it was Bigfoot, he also didn't rule it out. Simply not being able to rule out Bigfoot means that was probably Bigfoot. Whether or not you believe in Sasquatch, Roy is not taking any chances. He's locking the doors, keeping the dog inside, and hopefully stocking up on enough flashlights and beef jerky to supply a Discovery Channel documentary. If this ginormous footprint does belong to Bigfoot, it raises some important questions, like who is Bigfoot/Sasquatch? Some think he's a leftover from an ancient society of hominids who lived in North America long before the Native Americans showed up. Others have guessed he could be some unknown monkey relative. Who do you think Bigfoot is? Remnant of a lost civilization? A lost species? Lost ape? Or a figment of everyone's imagination? And now for a quick break because it's shout-out time! I want to give a big thank you to John Stamos and Chris Hembry for supporting this channel. Thanks so much for watching, and if you are new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out. Chaos and the Emperor's Tomb. They survived everything. Almost. For over 2,000 years, the Terracotta Army stood in perfect formation, silent, stoic, and eternally on guard. Crafted to protect Emperor Qin Shi Huang, the man who unified China, these ancient clay soldiers have faced looters, earthquakes, and centuries underground. The Terracotta Army has been one of the greatest treasures left behind by any civilization, a true feat of ancient craftsmanship and a testament to the belief in the afterlife. Qin Shi Huang really thought these guys were going to help him conquer heaven or something. But do you know what the Terracotta Army wasn't prepared for? A 30-year-old tourist who vaulted over a safety rail like it was the Olympic finals and crash-landed in pit number 3. Suddenly, all hell broke loose in the Emperor's tomb. This archaeological faux pas happened in Xi'an, home to one of the greatest archaeological treasures on Earth, the mausoleum of China's first emperor. Thousands of tourists visit daily to marvel at the Terracotta Warriors, an army of 8,000 unique clay soldiers painstakingly crafted around 209 BC. When I say unique, I mean each face is different and every detail was hand-molded. And you thought painting your Warhammer miniatures was hard work? Try shaping 8,000 life-sized warriors. Experts believe it took over 30 or 40 years for 700,000 laborers to complete the tomb and the warriors. That's way longer than it took to build the Great Pyramid of Giza. According to officials, the unnamed tourist didn't just step over a line and trip. This was no accident. He leapt over a guardrail and protective netting to land 15 feet down inside the pit. Once inside, he began pushing and shoving on all the fragile clay soldiers. I wish I could say he was high-fiving them, but he wasn't. This maniac was manhandling ancient artifacts like he thought they would come alive and fight back. Security intervened quickly, but not before 2 warriors were damaged to varying degrees. And yes, there is a video. Footage surfaced showing the man sprawled on the ground among toppled warriors like someone who took immersive tourism way too literally. It was a weird incident, but the museum opened up and everything was normal the next day. For now, officials are working to assess the full damage and restore the broken warriors. The incident has reignited conversations around museum security, visitor etiquette, and the eternal question, why would you do that? The Terracotta Army survived 2 millennia, dynasties, revolutions, and the selfie stick era, but apparently no ancient masterpiece is safe from a rogue tourist on a bad decision bender. Queen Hatshepsut's shattered face. Kings and queens throughout history have left great monuments of themselves behind in an attempt to become immortal, but one queen left behind something a little weirder. A whole lot of shattered noses. For decades, every ancient Egypt documentary narrated by a guy with a gravelly voice has told us the same story. After Queen Hatshepsut died, her stepson, Thutmose III, smashed her statues into oblivion to erase her from history. Talk about an ornery teenager. This kid wrecked all of his stepmother's royal selfies. At least this is what the documentaries and historians have been saying. However, it might not be true. Modern researchers armed with 21st century technology are on the case. New research, led by Yun-Yi Wong from the University of Toronto, is flipping the narrative like a golden sarcophagus lid. After digging through thousands of broken statue bits from Hatshepsut's mortuary temple, along with studying long-lost field reports from the Metropolitan Museum of Art's 1920s expeditions, Wong has come to a bold conclusion. Hatshepsut's statues weren't smashed in a fit of royal rage by her cranky kid. They were deactivated as part of standard maintenance. Turns out, ancient Egyptians had a whole ritual system for saying goodbye to statues once a pharaoh kicked the pyramid. These weren't your average decorative sculptures, but were believed to contain the spirit, power, and authority of the person they represented. When a person in Egypt died, you couldn't just leave their spiritual avatar lying around like a haunted action figure. You had to respectfully shut it down, which explains why Hatshepsut statues were broken at strategic weak points like the neck, the waist, and the knees. This was how the Egyptians took the spiritual batteries out of statues. Some of Hatshepsut's busts were even reused as building materials or turned into stone tools. Who was Hatshepsut, you ask? Well, she was a boss, that's for sure. She is believed to have been Egypt's longest reigning female pharaoh. She ruled like a queen and a king. She wore a fake beard and crushed trade deals and built monuments that still leave tourists awestruck. Under her reign, Egypt wasn't just thriving, it hit peak prosperity with granite obelisks to match. Then, once she was gone and the men took over, Egypt fell back into less than perfect times. It was always assumed that Thutmose III tried to delete his dear mother from the record books, but now Wong's research suggests it might not have been that personal. It could have just been tradition. Some rulers leave behind a legacy of stone faces. Hatshepsut left behind a legacy of smashed stone faces and a lot of unanswered questions about her fake beard. The Ice Age Queens of Europe. Anyone else randomly get a song from the Queens of the Stone Age stuck in their head? Well, forget about them and let's check out some other queens. Queens of the Ice Age. Long before Instagram filters, Barbie, or Renaissance nudes, there were the Venus figurines. Prehistoric pinups carved between 38,000 and 11,000 years ago. These tiny, headless, curvaceous sculptures of women have been confusing the living daylights out of archaeologists for over 160 years. Who made these curvaceous ladies? Seriously, these figurines are thick with 3 C's. Oh, to be a cave dweller in Ice Age Europe. It's 38,000 BC and everything outside is frozen, but inside it's nice and warm with a cozy fire going in the stone hearth. It was in this very cave environment that the Venus figurines were carved. While someone blew a tune on a bird bone flute and someone else roasted mammoth over the fire, a skilled artisan inside Germany's Hohlefels cave made themselves an ivory figurine of a woman. She was faceless, nameless, but totally bodacious. Fast forward to 2008, archaeologists found that very woman, known today as the Venus of Hohlefels. It's thought to be the oldest human figurine ever discovered, but it isn't one of a kind. More than 200 Venus figurines have now been found across Europe and Asia, carved from ivory, bone, antler, jet, stone, and even clay. They are faceless and without feet, but have extremely exaggerated lady parts. What they lack in toes, they make up for with junk in their trunks. 99% of them are women, said Katharina Rebay-Salisbury, a professor of prehistoric humanity. But what do they mean? And why did cultures separated by thousands of miles all carve the exact same figures? Ever since the first Venus was found in 1864 by a French marquis, theories have been piling up. Some think the Venus figurines depict a mother goddess, or at the bare minimum, a fertility deity. This could explain the ample curves. A less savory but entirely plausible theory is that they were used as adult entertainment, sort of like a catalog for cavemen. Dr. Richard Johnson concluded that these women were survival queens. He speculated that their ample fat deposits point to them surviving times of famine and hardship by plumping up. The Venus figures may have been body types for Ice Age women to aspire to, not for beauty, but for survival. A great theory, though, is that the Venus figurines are selfies. They may have even been carved by women who had only ever seen themselves reflected in someone else's eyes or reflected in still water. If there's one thing scholars do agree on, it's that the interpretation of these figurines keeps changing with the times. Colonialists viewed them as primitive figurines crafted by a subspecies of human. Nowadays, they are seen as feminine goddesses emanating power. Katharina said they're like mirrors. Everyone sees something different. And that's kind of the point. The hardest jigsaw puzzle in history. Have you ever thought putting a puzzle together would be fun, only to end up crying at midnight when you can't find all the pieces? If you can relate, then you're going to love this. Archaeologists are currently tackling the hardest jigsaw puzzle in history. They didn't get it at their local game shop. They got it from the depths of a London construction site. 2,000 years ago, a Roman building exploded. I don't know how, but it went boom. Then it was lost underneath London, buried below centuries of social progress and advancing technology. Then, in the modern age, archaeologist Han Lee with the Museum of London Archaeology found the ruins in the middle of the city. Amidst the wreckage of the Roman building was a painted plaster masterpiece. A fresco so gorgeous, it could have been painted by Leonardo da Vinci. Well, experts thought it was probably gorgeous. They didn't know right away because the fresco was shattered into a million pieces, like a tub of Lego dumped upside down. Han Lee and his colleagues spent 3 months reassembling the fragments like forensic decorators. And it wasn't just one straightforward puzzle with pieces that had to be put together. There were a few images from different walls, all jumbled like someone put 6 puzzles in a blender and challenged you to solve them. Lee said it was like assembling the world's most difficult jigsaw puzzle, but it was totally worth it. Among the fragments was a rare gem, a painter's signature. Whoever made this thing left his mark, and scientists are scrutinizing it with a giant magnifying glass all these years later. Proud this artist must be to gain fame 2,000 years after his death. The fragments included vibrant yellow wall panels bordered in black, plus birds, fruit, flowers, and fancy musical instruments. This fresco wasn't just slapped onto any old wall. It once decorated the home of someone with serious Roman coin. Someone who wanted guests to walk in and say, "Ah yes, this guy lays on the chase lounge while being fanned with a palm frond and hand-fed grapes." The building might be long gone, but the attitude, the flamboyance, the grandeur of Rome is still very much alive in the ruins and in the faded paint. What would you give for an original Roman fresco? The gold-laced spear. If you were an ancient Japanese warrior facing imminent death, where would you hide your most treasured blade? Obviously, you would travel to the legendary Okinoshima Island and bury the sword beneath a sacred boulder. Duh, no-brainer. Unless, of course, you happen to be a lady samurai, because women have not been able to step foot on the island of Okinoshima for a very long time. Just like that controversial monastery in Greece, where women are forbidden, women are prohibited from ever visiting this Japanese island. I suppose that means the team of archaeologists who uncovered a missing warrior's blade must have been entirely men. This sausage fest of archaeologists found an ancient spear inside a bronze sheath, buried underneath a holy stone. It's one of the coolest weapons ever found in Japan, or anywhere for that matter. But it wasn't found recently. It was dug up near the Okitsugu Shinto Shrine on Okinoshima in 1954. But then, for the next 50 years, the spear sat in historical limbo. Researchers never even bothered peeking inside its bronze sheath. It was like finding an ancient Fabergé egg and never opening it. Then came modern technology. Armed with CT scans and X-rays, Japan's Cultural Affairs Agency cracked open the sheath digitally, exposing the hidden designs on the buried weapon. And they are awesome. They're the kinds of designs you'd expect to find in a Yakuza tattoo parlor. Phoenixes, feathered motifs, vines swirling like a divine tattoo sleeve, and enough gold inlay to make your jeweler weep. These aren't mere decorations. They are kintsugan, a rare and delicate technique where gold is gently embedded into carved grooves. At this point, you might be wondering why someone would go into combat with such a beautifully decorated blade. This is one of those weapons that looks better hung on your wall than impaled through your enemy. Experts say the gold inlaid spear wasn't meant to pierce armor. It was a honohin, a sacred offering to the sea gods. It was less of a weapon and more of a celestial gift to the Jinn, the dragon god of the tides. It all makes sense considering the spear was found on an island nicknamed Island of the Gods. As for how old it is, the spear was crafted sometime between the late 6th and early 7th centuries during the Kofun period. During this era, Okinoshima was a divine hotspot administered by the Munakata Taisha Shrine. The island played host to high-stakes rituals involving everything from sailor safety to diplomacy with foreign nations. Somewhere along the line, women got the boot. Men who visit must perform mandatory purification rituals. And don't even think about getting a souvenir. You're not allowed to take as much as a pebble off the sacred island. With so much history, it's no wonder UNESCO slapped a World Heritage Site badge on the island in 2017. Scientists have already uncovered more than 80,000 ritual artifacts buried in the soil, including swords, mirrors, beads, and now this glam spear. But why did ancient people leave so many amazing and sometimes strange artifacts behind? That's the question that researchers are trying to answer. The most likely explanation is simply that for the past almost 2,000 years, the island has been a place where people travel to give offerings to powerful gods. And now archaeologists are digging up those artifacts and putting them on display. Do you think they should be left in the ground? Isn't it kind of like stealing offerings for the gods? Won't that make them angry? Let me know your thoughts. Poland's accidental time machine. Talk about a blast from the past. In a small town in Poland, a secret was found inside a church spire. A secret that wasn't secret when it was first placed there, but somehow everyone simply forgot about it. This is the oldest known time capsule in the world, and the stuff discovered inside it is awesome. Plus, the random way the capsule was discovered is pretty funny. During what was supposed to be routine church renovations, workers stumbled upon a small copper box tucked inside the sphere atop the church of St. Stanislaus. No big deal, right? Just a heavenly little tin lunchbox from the past. Wrong. The 18th century called, and it wants its box back. Stamped with the date 1726, like a proud expiration label, the copper container held coins from the 1700s, documents written in Latin, and one random lead bullet. And it wasn't the only time capsule. There were 4 of them tucked into the church spire like rushing nesting dolls of history, dated 1726, 1786, 1884, and 1914. It's incredible that this Polish town repeatedly added to its time capsule collection, only to lose track of them over time. Inside the oldest one is a parchment describing a massive town fire that roasted the village like a marshmallow. It even detailed the church burning to the ground. Up until now, the oldest known time capsule was discovered in Boston. That one, hidden behind a George Washington painting, was originally placed in 1795 by none other than Samuel Adams and Paul Revere. Museum experts are now translating all of those dusty Latin scrolls and examining the artifacts. I'd love to know what the scrolls say, just to know what people in 1726 thought the folks of the future should be aware of. Norway's 1,300-year-old ship burial. Move over, Vikings. History is getting a reboot. On a windy bluff in coastal Norway, archaeologists just cracked open what might be the region's oldest known VIP express ticket to the afterlife. Forget about an escalator in heaven. This is a 1,300-year-old ship destined for Valhalla. Actually, this boat is so old it predates the Viking Age. It was still built by the people who would come to be known as the Vikings, but it does predate their notorious pillaging spree across Europe. The burial was found in Leka, where before the Vikings became history's favorite berserkers, the people were already sending off their dead in style. How? By stuffing them into ships, burying them under massive mounds of earth, and saying, "Bon voyage, Sigrid." Locals had always suspected there was something funny about this big grassy hill in Leka. It was a 23-foot-tall, 197-foot-wide hill that looked like it had a secret. Residents weren't sure what the hill was hiding. Maybe a giant, a dragon, but they were convinced something amazing was beneath the grassy surface. Turns out they were right. Local legend turned into reality. When archaeologists finally got permission to poke around the hill, they struck pay dirt. Buried inside the mound were large rivets and wooden fragments, clear signs that this wasn't just a glorified compost pile. This was a ship burial, the kind reserved for someone with serious clout. Someone like Ragnar Lodbrok, everyone's favorite Viking star. Ragnar, however, was born long after this ship was interred. According to radiocarbon dating, the mound was built around 700 AD during the Merovingian period, a good 90 years before the Viking Age officially kicked off. So, who was buried here? No one knows for sure, but the grave goods and the sheer size of the mound suggest this was no average sailor. This was likely a high-status individual, someone who maybe commanded trade, led people, or at least owned a boat big enough to get buried in. This find proves that Scandinavians were building big ships and mastering the sea way earlier than previously thought. Did ancient superhumans build Easter Island's Moai? What if the biggest archaeological mystery is hiding an even bigger secret? The stone heads of Easter Island are some of the biggest and stoniest treasures left behind by any civilization. But which civilization would that be exactly? If you thought the Easter Island heads were solemn statues carved by ancient Polynesians with nothing but stone tools and a whole lot of free time, buckle up, because a new theory has entered the chat, and it is packing 12,000 years of speculation. This new theory is brought to you by Graham Hancock, professional history rebel, Netflix headliner, and mainstream archaeology's #1 enemy. Hancock says the famous Moai statues of Easter Island are not 900 years old. In his world, they are at least 11,000 years old and were crafted by a mysterious Ice Age civilization, one that strolled across the globe planting giant stone heads like turnips. According to Hancock, this can be proven by bananas. He said that bananas showed up on Easter Island 3,000 years ago. And because bananas do not grow natively on Easter Island, Hancock believes they were brought there by a global Ice Age society, who for the next few millennia spent all their time carving over 1,000 giant stone statues. You might know this already, but the Moai do have bodies. They're just buried in the soil, leaving only the giant heads sticking out above ground like carrot tops. Hancock said that the Moai were made by a very ancient culture, but the platforms that some of them are standing on were later added by the Polynesians, who found the island abandoned. The Moai tight-lipped and just kind of adopted them as their own. Hancock's proof for this is the smoothness of the Moai. He claims the giant statues are very smooth, majestic, and clearly made by an advanced society. Meanwhile, the platforms many of them sit on are cruder and made from stacked rubble and leftovers. Hancock sees this as evidence that the statues came first from a now lost culture, and the platforms were added later by the Polynesians who just wanted to be involved. Meanwhile, archaeologist Dr. Dale F. Simpson Jr. would like to remind everyone that similar statues exist across most of Polynesia. On the islands of Hivaoa and Raivave, there are statues with the same long faces, belly-hugging hands, and "don't talk to me before my coffee" expressions as the Moai. Hancock says it doesn't really defeat his theory, it just shows that whoever built these statues did so everywhere they went, across the Polynesian islands and maybe even to other parts of the world. If Hancock's theory holds true, it could suggest a connection to other ancient monumental structures, like the colossal stone heads built by the Olmec culture in Mexico, hinting at a truly global reach for this lost civilization. Beyond the physical evidence, Hancock also points to ancient myths to support his grand theory. Local legend speaks of a land called Hiva, which was swallowed by the sea. The Easter Island people have their own version of the Atlantis myth. To Hancock, that is code for a worldwide flood, which he suspects may have raised sea levels 400 feet and drowned the civilization responsible for building the original Moai. Hancock is convinced there was a global flood, the same one talked about in the Bible. He believes that much of ancient Easter Island is now underwater, and any trace of this superculture, other than the statues, lies beneath the waves. Archaeologists have already been there and done that, though. The Chilean Navy scanned the seafloor near Easter Island, divers poked around the reefs, and what did they find? Some obsidian shards and a lot of coral, but no Atlantis yet. Not even one measly brick. Thanks for watching! Which discovery was your favorite? And what would you like to learn more about? Be sure to let me know in the comments below and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. See you tomorrow. Bye.